Welcome back to I Love Your Stories. I'm your host, Hava Gurevich, and today I'm joined by visionary artist and art therapy coach, Tonya McGuire. Tonya came to art through a turning point in her life when health challenges led her to re examine what mattered and reconnect with her creative voice. From there, she developed a deeply personal style rooted in narrative and emotional resonance, creating work that invites reflection and connection. In this conversation, we talk about what it looks like to begin or begin again, especially later in life, how mentorship and community can shape your path, and how creating can become a way to move through trauma rather than around it. This, this is a conversation about resilience, reinvention, and what it really means to build a creative life on your own terms. Help me in welcoming Tanya to this episode of I Love Your Stories.
Now, quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the show. When I started selling my art, I had absolutely no idea how to actually turn it into a business, a professional business. And then I came across art storefronts, and that was a game changer. I've been a customer now for years, and they've been instrumental every step of the way of helping me succeed. I have a gorgeous, powerful commerce website. I have marketing tools and a membership to a community that is very supportive and teaches me how to succeed as an artist. Check them out, artstorefronts.com, and tell them Hala sent you.
Welcome back to I Love Your Stories. And my guest today is visionary artist Tonya McGuire. And Tonya is also an art therapy coach and so many other things. And I'm so excited to speak with you.
Oh,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you, Ava. It's great to be here.
So, let's just start. If you can tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and how you got to be an artist.
Well, again, thank you for having me. And I really didn't grow up thinking I was going to be an artist and a professional one. Um, I really was driven and structured later in life, but with a mindset of a single parent. My daughter in scholastics was not as strong as it was on the softball field. In athletics, that took, a great deal of discipline from all parties that were involved to make sure she got where she needed to be, and has successfully just retired as a pro athlete. So,
Oh my
we
God,
had
that
lots of yeah, we have lots of wins, and, very excited about so many portions of my life. I kind of bucket them, because I just they do cross over, but there's so many different facets of my life. I mean, if I just look back and stop for a minute, it takes me about 20 minutes or so just to regurgitate what it is that I've really done, which is really cool. But at the end of the day, I think it defines highly someone that is in, a creative mindset, checking boxes, stifling creativity in so many different ways as we do things for other people. I've owned several businesses as an entrepreneur as well, and dabbled in that until it wasn't something that made sense to support my family. If in fact it went south, and that's basically AKA, a derived failure, but a foot forward in the success of where I am today.
so when did you start when did art come into the picture?
Well, it's always been in the background. I'll share it's very unusual, but I think very typical for many creatives that get, caught in this virtual loop of earning and the status of earning and being told as a child, potentially, if they were, and many of us were, that we couldn't earn money, being an artist. And, we all know the internet changed that for many, many of us. And now I'm just navigating that journey, which is fantastic, but, it has its days too that, it's very busy, and in that, I'm showing my art, but we had, a little dry spell here recently in the last few months at shows, and, it's writing on the wall that, we need to develop those different streams. So, to answer your question as succinctly as I can, my dad was my hero in art, and my ability to do art to a point of, touching people. And who knew that that was really why I would be doing it today is for that win, that,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I feel that, or that really means the world to me. And oh yes, I want to buy that, or, just those beautiful moments. And I got my first with my dad and he cried and I couldn't believe that I was able to touch this grown man that I had never seen cry. I mean, he was quite the tyrant, with us 3 kids and the way he was raised as a German Catholic. So just saying, it is what it is, but he had 3 sisters that 2 of them were nuns and his mom was, yeah, quite the
Okay.
taskmaster. So, we got what his experience was, and I'm quickly working in my now 60s for over 2 decades trying to reverse that strategy in conscious living, for caregiving, period. So, at the end of the day, it really was a type A, personality there at the end, and I'll share. I'm a very technical person in that I enjoyed the technical world. I did sales leadership in that arena for many, many years, and I love leadership. I love the idea of watching people bloom, and not realizing that they had this capability or that, gift and just finding their own, but finding my own over all those years was just, stifled, and I recognize that there's just incredible gifts in that. So that's kinda where I am today as a result of heart surgery. I had SVT and had no idea that that's what I had. It stands for supraventricular tachycardia, so it's a basically misfiring of your heart in layman's terms, and they go in non-invasive through the groin and, um, cauterize literally
Oh,
the inside the heart.
AFib is sort of similar procedure, right?
Well, AFib is, and I don't wanna speak technical because 'cause we'll probably have some doctors listening, and I don't wanna
Oh,
get it wrong,
maybe.
but they had 4 ablations that they did for me out of 5. So there's a 5th one that was looming and in a precarious spot. So for what it's worth, a lot of people do suffer these symptoms, which was passing out at the wheel, feeling like, you were dehydrated, maybe you drank too much coffee, maybe you hadn't eaten enough. I mean, all of these things. So if it's landing and hitting on any front that those symptoms are like you're experiencing, what you want to stave off is the AFib. You wanna stave that because those are steps down the road potentially, and in some cases, it's just, like, in the left field versus the right field
Wow.
of the issues, so, don't ignore them. I did for many, many years, ignored the symptoms thinking, it was health related and, got all the health related stuff in check except caffeine, so I didn't have that excuse, but, working, 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 and then everything about you kinda gets tabled. That's kinda
Mhm.
where I was, so it took me down. I mean, it literally put me in a stop, and when I did that with no consequence other than now I'm in angst, complete angst on disability because I couldn't drive, and I'm in a sales leadership role, so I needed my car, I lived in my car, and all of my team is out in the field, and, now I'm trying to handle it remote and figure out what's going on with me, and I had 3 stress tests, of the 3rd of which I went down, and down literally, like, on the treadmill, I was out, so it was validating, and I was like, "Wow, this is fantastic," but that's how I found my brushes again, is dealing with that angst all that time. It was almost a 8-week period up until this point, and then we scheduled surgery.
So
So
when you talk about being an art therapy coach,
mhm,
you got there through your own experience.
I did,
That's
yep.
and you've always been artistic, you've always been an artist, but you've always put somebody else's life or other goals ahead of your own. And it sounds like with your own health, you were doing the same thing for a long time until it came to a point where your heart's like, stop, reassess.
I guess, I mean, I kinda say now I dream in chroma color because I really, really do, and I sketch, and that's how I get inspiration a lot is through sketching in those quiet moments of the morning early. that I used to have, but rush, 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 and I'd get my gym in and then I'd be at work and, it's a 6:30 kind of grind at work. And I had been up since 4:30, 5 o'clock, many, 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 many mornings. So it wasn't just, the art, it was about healing for me when I
Mm,
realized that, I was really enjoying the
yeah.
process of trying to improve the drawing and the painting, and it was all acrylics because I didn't even know oils then, and my drawings were wonky, and I started looking for a source that was online. We were still in this, post-COVID moment recently because 'cause I've only been doing this now 18 months. I mean, I literally graduated from the institute in 6 months. That normally takes a year, and I'm painting pro I mean, I'm just constantly painting and selling my work before I even found the institute. So in my neighborhood, which is almost 9,000 residents, I developed a portrait business for pets. And it was just, prolific. I couldn't believe that I was being embraced that way. And I thought, my gosh, why didn't I, the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
All right. I really want to talk about visionary art and um and get your take on it. You
Okay.
you sort of like mentioned it briefly by saying that you dream in chroma, like you dream and then you paint that. So I'm reading like a Google overview of what a visionary artist
Oh,
is.
okay.
First, visionary artists create art that transcends the physical world, exploring spiritual, mystical, and altered states of consciousness through intricate, surreal, and psychedelic imagery.
I
Does
don't
that
know that I've ever Googled it, but I love that. I love some of that. Yeah.
so you self-describe as a visionary artist?
Mhm.
Tell me why you gravitated towards that term to describe yourself.
Okay. Well, it goes back to when I realized I really wanted to figure out a way to retire. I really did. And when I did, it was my very first little solo exhibit show that I had as a pop-up in the neighborhood. And everyone's feedback was, wow, this is more than a pet portrait. This is a story. This is really more of what he felt like or she felt like versus what he looked like or, and that to me made perfect sense for the storytelling piece that I was enjoying in my compositions in symbolism. Because I too had symbolism that was cropping up, like the hummingbirds and the lotus flowers. And I wanted to know what in the heck that meant. The movement, I was chasing light, like a lot of, artists, you start to research why you feel this way or why you're doing
Yeah.
this and the architecture. And that's really the feeling of becoming that I was finding I enjoyed in the women that I was painting, in wildlife and sea life paired for the becoming part of their lives because I was telling my own story. I was looking back and honoring the past and moving forward, and all these sketches would come out of my, dreams and evenings that I would look back over my journals. And I don't use particularly, the one sketch for one painting. I wind up layering, doing a lot of the emulation from Pinterest boards that I keep for what I love and artists that I love, to be honest. I mean, you got to learn how to still like an artist too and make it work. And for me, it was finding things that were supporting. Now I recognize that I'm editing. I'm really trying to become a better editor when it comes to being an artist. So we're wearing all those hats, but I do need that resting space so that people can relax and be calm in the intention that I'm painting, which
I love
I'm
that.
trying to do better at. So, because I've got so much to say in my voice, and you always, I think, as an artist, especially an abstract realism artist that I am, I feel like that you're always chasing that refinement,
Mhm.
you know.
You were getting feedback from your community
Mhm.
that your work really resonated, and it resonated on a level that was not just like, oh, this is a nice portrait of my dog. It resonated on a very personal,
Yeah,
psychological, symbolic level.
yeah.
And that at that point is when you joined this institute. You want to talk about
I
that?
I did. I joined the institute again because my the drawing skills themselves were wonky. But at the end of the day, I really love learning how to draw better. I mean, dropping the line and starting in the middle and, taking your source to your canvas and making sure your perspective was what it needed to be. And it took, a good portion of my training in those
Mhm.
first couple of courses, but I was hooked after that, Hava.
This institute it's not a traditional art school that you went to.
It's very non-traditional. In fact, there's a family, and many people will be familiar with them, as they see the name again, but Milan is the Demetra and Ellie Milan daughter and mother team, and they're all 5 in a family, the husband and wife and 3 kids that are all artists, and they started in Arizona, and then they moved to Athens, Georgia, and now they're residing in Sarasota, Florida, and their gallery is there with some open workshops in person again finally, and we have a community of graduates there that become, through election your own election to become a member is the SOPA. It's called SOPA, and it's Society of Professional Artists. So outside of my art storefront, incredibly blessed community, I also have this community that affords me that, for lack of a better word, the mentoring that I get on the daily from folks like yourself that are members
Mhm.
that are experiencing the struggles. And now we're in content engagement and attraction offers, that we will have various individuals be reading about. We can gain the confidence in those systems much
Mhm.
faster than you can um, kind of digest yourself. So it
So
takes the village, that's it.
you are, in a sense, a success story of taking this courses online or in person and successfully turning that into an art career.
Yes, yes, and I'm not alone. I mean, these individuals, attest to this
Mhm.
success often, and it is to tribute Ellie Milan, who was an artist for 30 years, her and her husband, as a partnership. They collaborated on some pieces, but they individually sold over 30,000 paintings at the time that I met
Wow.
them. So, with that being said, it was her goal and her life's dream and passion, and still is, to even, further this, in her quest for, her own mission, and that's to share your light with the world. And she literally shares completely transparently, the whole family, including the husband, Jake, um, the marketing, the madness behind the scenes,
Yeah.
what needs to happen, those systems that, aren't working, that are working. So for an artist in the mastery program, which is very, very affordable today, will not be in the next, couple of years. I'll just mark that on the calendar for anybody that's even thinking about it. It's important to know that, these things grow like we grow in our investment value, right? So I would not have been anywhere close to where I am today. I may have gotten there, take me another decade, don't have too much time to, kind of spin my wheels. So reuse becomes extremely
Have
helpful.
you have you considered offering classes yourself?
Well, the classes would be a regurgitation, quite frankly, of the systems that I'm learning. So, in respect for that, I do many different things to bring awareness to artists and creatives that don't have a clue that
Mhm.
it doesn't take, in my opinion, I think it can be learned in many ways, but,
Mhm.
the voice itself can be refined over time, but finding your voice is key. I mean, it is
Yeah.
key. You can paint and sketch and all day long it means something to you, but when it starts to resonate and tug at hearts is really where we wanna be. So,
Yeah.
I feel like, the visionary part of it was the part that inspired me the most, and that was, just really telling the story. So, I derived this Portraits That Speak. It's a legacy portraits focus, and it's taken me places, Hava, that this podcast just wouldn't even afford me the blessing of sharing, but I will share a tidbit of it is, in, a death network even. I'm gonna drop that because it's something to think about, and as we age, we're caregiving, right, to all of our families. And when we have the opportunity to, and I do, there's not necessarily mental health but mental decline, and a lot of that is supported in a doula situation. Like a baby doula is a death doula, and I have been introduced through a 45-year now new acquaintance from high school who lost his wife a year ago and had a doula for the death experience to transition kind of in a normalcy, transition, that was life-changing for their family. And I was introduced to her through him in New Mexico when I went to Santa Fe's Indian Market this past year in October, and I am absolutely floored. It has grown. I absolutely love the idea of telling these stories, not just in, an experience for transitioning in life, but just, today, to just be mindful of
Mm.
that's really where what we want to live with, not necessarily just the
Yeah.
color that matches the couch.
Yeah. I love that
So
idea. I'm fascinated with it. Started as a fascination with near-death experiences,
mhm,
and then, I was following on TikTok this, nurse. She's, end of life nurse. I There might be another term for it, but she, when I first heard her, what she was talking about are things that are very normal that happen
mhm.
when someone passes, that people don't, like, they're scared because what's going on, and she's like, "No, this is really normal." It's a beautiful process if you let it be.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, so that's really interesting, and I can see how, something like that could be encompassed under this umbrella of visionary artist.
yep.
What are you most passionate about right now?
Well, I'm a new grandma, and, I'll share my term is Mimi, because I'm a Mimi to our 60-pound staffy as well, a rescue staffy, so it just made sense, and I'm Mimi, and she's starting to mouth it out now. She's 16 months, and I couldn't be prouder, so I'm very passionate about that. But at the end of the day, it's legacy, really. I'm feeling like I'm growing something that's very meaningful, and I get confirmations of that when I'm at the shows, which I really enjoyed because I was so isolating at first, online doing the institute and not having the mentor because I quite frankly couldn't afford it. I had just figured out how to retire, and I wasn't retiring very well at that point. So I was trying to figure it all out. So I'm passionate about giving back. It's very much a
Mhm.
part of my life. I served on several boards in my corporate world, but Make-A-Wish Foundation is something dear to my heart. There's another one that is in the hospitals as far as mentoring and healing through the arts, but my most passion is in kids, and it's talking about, the ability to fail in the environment of arts, and how in the world can we even be considering taking that away? It cannot happen. So I'm very much an advocate of that, to the point of political, and it's very important, very, very important.
Yeah.
So trauma is number one, and I experienced some. I'll share on some emotional work that I needed to do during the period of time before I was diagnosed with the SVT. I was trying to figure out, is this anxiety? Is this just anxiety? Seriously? So I went through some therapy online, and the EMDR therapy that happens. It's a fast term, but it's one that's very legit with regard to post traumatic stress disorder. And that all came from childhood. A lot of that was unearthed during this time, and having had those experiences, I recognized that I was in a position to really touch some hearts here. If it wasn't just the parents that were really struggling, or a parent, I'll share either female or male, not necessarily just the females, but at the end of the day, it was important for me to find that vessel, and I did with the trauma workshop, and I'm creating that as we speak. We're doing trauma workshops. It is absolutely life-changing in many ways. It brings a lot of source material to the table for me, during and after, which is interesting, very interesting.
You are, a working artist. You
Mhm,
sell your work. You are doing art therapy. and coaching, art therapy. You're involved in all these other projects. How can people find out about your different endeavors?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, if anything here in this short talk has hit, you can find me on Instagram at Tonya McGuire Art.
It'll be in the notes, so
Okay,
Tonya McGuire
thank you.
Art. A final question for you that I like to ask everyone, and you've kind of alluded to it, but what is your definition of success and how has it changed over time?
Oh, wow. I've watched so many of your stories and I'd forgotten that one. I didn't prepare, but I will share my definition for success. I think the success is recognizing even post trauma and post life that life gets loud, but we can either react to it or we can sign on for the changes that need to happen internally first, because I think we need to look within first. But the success would be, managing that in any small way is the win. I get it in a high at my shows, talking with people that's looking at the art and experiencing anything. I want them to feel something, and that I get. And I think with that, we chase it. So the success would be the ability to be able to continue to do that. And I feel like, it's this cadence that we allow ourselves to either get into or to fall in the quite the opposite in resistance of not feeling like we can move. And, you shared earlier today, about feeling that way, and
Yeah.
no one escapes that,
Yeah.
but we have to be able to put ourselves back into that mode, and there comes the divine, with our belief that, we are doing what we need to do and what we can do at the moment. It might not be everything we want to achieve that day, that moment, that week, whatever, but life gets loud and we just need to sometimes have a space where we can bring us back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, as an artist who came to art professionally late in life and got it off the ground and is successful in a short time, what advice would you give an artist that is in your shoes from, is kind of at that point in life? Not necessarily a young artist, but somebody that has had another career, has put their passion aside for a long time and are finally, but they're there. What advice would you give?
In my right brain, in that answer, I wanna share my first thought technically is that people are working, they're still earning money, they're either on a pension if they are, God love them. 'Em, I'm not, and a lot of us aren't, and at the end of the, journey of making a decision that you maybe want to do, maybe it's just a little decision that you just know that you want to have you more free time to create or whatever that is, we still have to have that realization. I think that alone defines that they don't have a whole lot of time. They're working other jobs. And I mentor personally women and men that are in jobs of 40 plus hours a week, and they are turning out paintings in a portfolio of now 35 a month and a half later. They're working toward putting a body of work together. It's just unbelievable. So my main advice would be, it's surreal for me, I'll share, but you have to have your conversations around even your starting and video content, which you don't maybe even think about at this point. But it's early, it's in this stage of wondering maybe if they could leave their bank job and make a plan and really hold yourself accountable. Do your power statements on the daily when you're brushing your teeth and out loud and fierce,
Mhm.
repetitive, fierce, belief. And, weigh in an accountability partner, somebody that's been in your life. It doesn't have to be a family member and preferably not. Um, you're going to have a lot of naysayers and they're going to be close to you and it's going to hurt, but, flip it, flip your pain, find your voice, and even if that voice is gonna be changing, throughout the way, maybe you're doing, animated work, right now, and you don't want to continue doing animated work, and I mean that, respectfully for those that do it for a living. It's just what your voice is gonna lead you to that you have to say and that you wanna say to fulfill your heart, because you don't know what really fulfills your heart yet except for punching a clock or making sure your monies and tills are lining up at the end of the day and, being present at your full-time income. You'll soon have your own full-time income, and it doesn't come without patches of, you wanting to scream because you need to pay the mortgage, and I'm just, putting it out there. It's real. Success for me is the publications that I've been featured in, these recent publications. Your invite, Hava, to be honest, to our community, which is just an absolute joy, and many other things defining success. But I'm still growing and learning and trying to get out of 2000 IG jail, and we can talk about that too.
Maybe for another
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. So,
Um, this has been amazing.
oh, you.
Your journey is so inspiring to me.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I mean, you figured out a lot of things that have taken me decades to get to.
Well, I
And
inspired by you, and I'll share when
oh,
you went on your retreat, and this was, I think, dating us back about 18 months,
mm.
something like that, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you
Oh, the
were.
one from last year.
I think so. You were
Yeah,
videotaping it, and I was just jelly. I was looking going, "Oh, I want to be there," even though you were cold, and it looked like you were cold sometimes, and I don't like
it
cold.
was.
I'm in Florida, girl, I'm in flip-flops literally right now. So, for what it's worth, I would like to share that that is a piece, where we live vicariously through our mentors and, given maybe you don't want to be one, but you are to many of us and you inspire us on the daily. And with that being said, I feel like that vulnerability that you were willing to show then gave me the courage to get naked, to get vulnerable in that way, to share the story of what's behind the scenes, versus maybe
Mm-hmm.
what that's in front and what I wanted
Oh,
people
that.
to see. Because I had been living that life in corporate for years, consulting the small business owner, along the way of how to increase his profit. And I didn't want him to know about my daughter and, whatever else was going on in my world. I just wanted to get to know what I could do to help their business when, in fact, it probably would have helped me then to be more vulnerable. you know.
Yeah,
And I
oh,
didn't
that.
want to date anybody. I was single. I was a single woman, so I was guarded in that way
Yeah.
too, just to say. But, I didn't want to date my clients. I wanted to, not do that. So, but it was such a pleasure. Thank you, Tonya
Thank you.
McGuire, Art. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for tuning in. That's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please help us out by leaving a review, a comment, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. Every little bit helps, and I really appreciate it. And before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor and producer, Art Storefronts. If you've been thinking about turning your art into a real business or just want to level up your online presence, now is honestly the best time, especially with the holiday selling season coming up in Q4. I can't stress this enough. Art Storefronts isn't just a website builder. They're a full-blown partner for your art business. They give you the tools, education, and marketing support to actually make sales, not just sit online and hope. And if you're unsure whether your art will sell, no worries. Just head to artstorefronts.com and sign up for a demo. They'll give you a free art review and a marketing assessment of your art to show you exactly what's possible. So go to artstorefronts.com, tell them Hava sent you, and I'll catch you on the next episode.